The shooting range. In this episode, Pages of History, American Shermans in northern Tunisia, tactics and strategy, how should one play on bigger ships, and Metal Beasts, a tank that shoots literal uranium at its targets. Last time we were speaking about the new T-80U. Now it's time to discuss yet another vehicle introduced in the latest update, the M1a1 Abrams. It's the top American MBT, which has it all: mobility, survivability, and firepower. Let's start with the gun. This 120mm beauty comes equipped with a two-plane stabilizer, takes only 6 seconds to reload, and has a depression elevation angle of -9 to +20. The vehicle is also armed with 3 machine guns, 2 on the roof and another one coaxial to the main gun. There's no ERA. Instead, the front of the tank is protected by 2 layers of RHA, with 600mm of so-called NERA, or non-energetic reactive armor plates, squeezed in between them. These plates have a special inert liner which helps to dissipate some of the impact energy of a shaped charge's metal jet without using explosives. The turret is protected in a similar fashion with 800mm of NERA in the front, 400mm covering the mantlet, and 300 to 350 on the sides. A gunner, a tank commander, and a loader are all conventionally positioned in the turret, while a driver is sitting in the front of the hull, right in the middle. Ammo is stored in the rear side of the turret. In the rear of the hull, there are fuel tanks, radiators, and a gas turbine engine, outputting more than 1,500 horsepower. Now, a few words about ammunition. You get the M830 heat from the get-go. It's one of the most powerful heat rounds in the game, with a penetration rate of 650mm. Most top tanks have some kind of counter-heat effect capabilities, but they won't always save them from this one. The second round worth noting is the M829 APFSDS round with a depleted uranium penetrator. Yep, you'll be firing uranium at your enemies, penetrating around 500mm of armor at 100 meters. Another trademark quality of the vehicle is the great survivability. Thanks to a number of out-of-the-box design choices, it's not always possible to destroy the tank even from the side. Blowout panels allow the crew to survive the detonation of your ammo racks, and fuel is stored in special armored containers to prevent fire in the fighting compartment. All of that doesn't mean that the tank can't be taken out, of course. Its main weak spots are the zone on the turret right under the mantlet, the turret ring, and the mantlet itself. All these spots aren't protected by much armor, and a successful penetration of any of those might incapacitate your whole crew. The tank's mobility is simply amazing. In ideal conditions, it can reach a speed of 68 km per hour. That means around 50 kph when going off-road. You can get around 41 kph in reverse as well. That's a lot of tactical options right there. Speaking of tactical roles, the Abrams is best utilized as one of the main attackers of the team. It can push into a cap zone, survive being blasted on, and take care of all the defenders one after another. Its mobility permits it to change quickly its position, while its good elevation angles and decent turret mean that you can also snipe your enemies from a safe position in the distance. The only noticeable handicap is the sheer size of the vehicle. It's not built for hiding. The new Abrams is one of the most versatile vehicles in the game. It's tough, packs a punch, its rounds have great ballistics. All of that allows you to carry out a wide variety of missions in great comfort. Ah, the joys of American engineering. The first time American Shermans engaged in combat in North Africa was near El Alamein in the October of 1942, and the British crews were very happy to get them. Those new tanks were superior to Valentines and Crusaders, both in terms of protection and firepower, after all. Another important feature of Shermans was that they performed pretty well on soft, unstable ground. Shermans weren't as prone to be bogged down in desert sands, and their internals were better protected from the sand as well. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, who was in charge of the British forces in North Africa, was known to note that those new American tanks played an instrumental role in defeating Rommel's armies. What about the American tankers, though? The crews from the land of the free joined the fray only in the November of 1942, when most of the German and Italian forces had already been taken care of. At the beginning of December, American tankers from the 1st Armored Division of Major General Orlando Ward made it to Tunisia, which had been seeing heavy tank-on-tank fighting for around 2 weeks by then. The defending Italian units had been recently reinforced by the 10th Panzer Division under the command of Generalmajor Wolfgang Fischer. This German division had literally just arrived in Tunisia. These forces didn't have much experience when it came to fighting in the desert, but they saw a lot of fighting on the Eastern Front. On the 6th of December, a joint Italo-German unit consisting of a dozen Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs, as well as an unidentified number of Italian SPGs, launched a counter-offensive on the American lines, on the hills and rocks to the northwest of a town called Tiburba. Americans lost a platoon there. All of its officers were captured. Some sources claim that Americans took out 8 tanks in the process, but German sources say that there were only technical difficulties and malfunctions, as German crews hadn't fully adapted yet to fighting on the African soil. Anyhow, Americans had to take those positions back. 8 M3 Grant tanks, as well as 5 shiny new Shermans, were dispatched to take care of the situation. The battle took place in an area full of rocks. There was almost no vegetation to speak of, but there was still a lot of natural cover, and Germans made full use of it. They had only 2 PZ-4s and, some sources claim, a battery of 88mm anti-tank guns that had made it to the fight just in time. That was all. Most of the Axis armor had to move out of the area because Allies were pushing really hard in the other areas of the front. On the other hand, the Axis didn't really need a lot of manpower or tanks to hold their ground. In order to get to them, American tanks had to go through a very narrow road, constantly finding their way around obstacles and revealing one of their sides to enemy fire. When they made it to the top, it wasn't pretty. Soon, all American vehicles were engulfed in flames. That was a rather unfortunate turn of events. Dwight Eisenhower later said that the way Allied forces fought there was in violation of all principles of offense and defense. What was the end result, you might ask? As surprising as it might seem, after the things I've just told you, the Allies won. Germans simply depleted all their resources there and had to withdraw. And the very next day, American forces retook those positions without any problems, making this battle not only one of the first cases of Shermans being used in desert conditions, but also one of the most ridiculous victories of World War II. When War Thunder players finally make it beyond the first two eras of naval forces, they're in for a big change of pace. Engagements suddenly become much bigger and slower, and when compared to the small agile boats of the first ranks, the new available vessels seem like giants. They've a lot more firepower and move in a very different way. How to make this transition to bigger ships as smooth as possible? We'll tell you right now. The first thing you notice when going into a fight on a destroyer or a light cruiser is obviously the sheer size of your vessel. What does it mean for us, gameplay-wise? First, you need to account for your considerably bigger weight and displacement. Now you absolutely have to plan your route in advance. The huge steel vessel the size of a building doesn't build up speed, and certainly doesn't lose speed on a whim. Your ship has a much bigger turning radius. Now it is dozens or even hundreds of meters long. Forget about sharp turns in narrow straits. Broadly speaking, forget about any maneuvers close to any islands, as there will always be a risk of running aground or getting torpedoed in the side. Second, you have lots of guns, including your main caliber, secondary armaments, and AA guns, each of which has its own role to play and its own effective range. For example, secondary guns are effective at distances up to 5 kilometers, while your main guns can often fire at targets up to 20 kilometers away. In most combat situations, it doesn't make sense to use all of them at once, especially given that your AA guns live in their own happy world, creating a defensive sphere around you that has a radius of 1 or 1.5 kilometers at most. To get as much out of your huge arsenal as is humanly possible, you can control each one of your weapons systems independently. You can set priority targets with the help of X plus 1, 2, and 3 button combinations, and switch between different weapon types by pressing Alt plus 1, 2, or 3. Now, a few words about tactics. When engaging an enemy at long range, keep maneuvering. Lose speed and then go fast again. Change direction. Make tacks. It might seem that tricks like that won't work with big vessels, or vessels of this size, but that's far from true. Defensive maneuvers still will make a huge difference when shooting at a distant target. When engaging enemy destroyers and light cruisers, start by firing a couple of AP rounds. If you hit the center of the enemy vessel, you might knock out its engine and set it afire. Then keep on pounding the target with HE rounds, destroying its guns and separate sections. Then switch back to APs to finish the deed. Once you located the vessel's mag, it often only takes a single shot from a main caliber to send the enemy to the bottom of the sea. Don't stay in sniper mode for too long. Always be aware of your surroundings. Staying vigilant is staying alive. Remember, even a stray enemy aircraft or a stray torpedo could mean a world of pain. And the last thing, yet again, don't go to shallow waters. That's the domain of your worst enemies, PT boats. It'll be very hard to overpower them there. The first message comes from a player called Freezing Comes.
I get killed a lot in Alaska.
Well, despite its urban environment, Alaska is relatively easy to shoot across, and many of its roads can be exposed to fire. Stay vigilant, and you'll have a much easier time there. Johnny Crees asks,
How to escape from radar lock?
Well, you've several options. The most straightforward one is never get locked on in the first place. Don't get too close to enemy SPAAG. They are designed to blow aircraft up, so it's not a favorable matchup for you anyway. Then, if one managed to lock onto you anyway, start maneuvering. Quickly put some distance between you, get out of its firing range, or, if it's possible under the circumstances, drop your altitude and cling to the ground. That might make you disappear from SPAAG's sights for a moment, and you'll get a chance to destroy the enemy in low-level flight. The next question was asked by Milorz Sepia. What a name! Hope we pronounced it right.
Do you plan to make something like Mythbusters series? Or is this comment something that might make you consider the idea?
Well, we're not completely foreign to the idea. There was some discussion going on, but are there actually that many myths to bust in War Thunder? That's what concerns us. Can you name a dozen or two? The Scottish Koala writes, I'm wondering if the Ho 229 can be tracked by radar. Just as any other regular aircraft, yes. Yeah, its appearance might make you think of an American B-2 stealth bomber, and it did have a smaller radar cross-section than a conventional aircraft of the era, but, well, shape isn't everything. Most of the technologies that give the very same B-2 its stealth capabilities didn't even exist back then. So, no special stealth capabilities on that one. The next question comes from Caleb Brum. What are you going to be working on for the next update? That's a great question that we cannot answer. We're working on the content for the next update right now, and on the content for the update that will come after it, and on many things that will come even later. Game development is a complex process involving more than 100 people, and the things that you see in the new update are just the tip of the iceberg. Keep in mind that there is always roughly 10 times more exciting stuff being worked on behind the scenes. Then comes a player called Tikas216 with a suggestion.
Pages of history on helicopters, please.
Why not? We'll make one in one of the next episodes. When it comes to helis, there are a lot more interesting stories to tell. Well, that's all for today. You're watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment. Subscribe to the channel. Go on, press that bell button. Leave a like. And tell us what you think in the comments below. See you in a week.